Will President-elect Donald Trump make true on campaign promises?
A Trump administration will secure and defend the borders of the United States, and yes, we will build a wall.
Dreamers hoping for the best.
There's a lot of people with fear, but we're asking them not to panic and to realize that they're not alone.
Plus, Arizona remained red. Any Republican leaders headed to Washington.
So I do think Arizona will have a voice in the new Trump administration.
From Douglas and invited to New York for Donald Trump's victory speech.
He was more than respectful towards me. He met members of my family.
One Border Patrol agent has the attention of America's next president. This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thanks for joining us. On the campaign trail, Donald Trump said he'd consider overturning President Obama's executive order allowing Dreamers to remain in the U.S. Those statements igniting a lot of fear for Mexicans brought to the U.S. as children. Karina Ruiz is a Dreamer and part of the Arizona Dream Act Coalition.
We're telling them, first of all, that we know it's hard, that there's a lot of people with fear, but we're asking them not to panic. And to realize that they're not alone. There's close to 800,000 Dreamers in the nation, so they're not alone. So we want them to keep that in mind and stay strong and stay informed.
Is there any conversation about filling out paperwork or perhaps returning to Mexico to wait this out until we see some resolution?
That, I don't believe it's an option for most of us. My fear is that those people that are not informed might want to flee, like what happened with SB 1070 here in Arizona years ago. So I encourage people, if you have a friend that's thinking about going to Mexico, let them know to get informed and to wait here. Because we saw many Dreamers that left to Mexico and then they couldn't get DACA because they left. And one of the requirements is for you to be in here continuously. So we don't want people to make that mistake.
Tell me about that decision, because some Dreamers have delayed parts of their life, but you're married and you have children.
Yes. Well, when I came to the U.S., I found out that I couldn't work because of my age. It was one of the reasons why I couldn't work. So I started going to school. I met my husband. I got married. And I started my life here. So I saw no reason to go back to Mexico. In Arizona, with Proposition 300, that was made into law by the voters here in Arizona, that affected me directly because I was going to ASU and I had a year and a semester left to go. I was able to get a scholarship. Many Dreamers were not blessed to have that emergency scholarship and had to drop out of school. When I had one semester and a class left to graduate with a bachelor's of biochemistry from ASU, I had to make the tough decision of either keep working or studying. And when I finished my career without a permit, I was not going to be able to work. So I made the tough decision of leaving school. I told my parents, I told my husband, I told my one child that I had at the time that I was going to go back and finish that it's going to be put on hold. But that dream was there, and I was going to make sure that it happened. Thanks to DACA, last year I went back to school, and I finished that semester. So now I'm a graduate from ASU with a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry. So I tell Dreamers out there, it's hard, it's not easy. It took me 12 years, but it's doable.
Do you understand the argument that some people have made about Dreamers and why they believe they should not be here or they should return home?
When people get to know us and they realize that we're part of their society, then they start changing their ideas. Like, I've met people that they tell me, you're a Dreamer, and I say, yes, I'm a Dreamer. I'm undocumented. I just have this work permit, but it's not permanent. And they say, I don't believe it. And I say, yes, it's not something I show. It's just where I was born, and that my parents made the decision of bringing me here without permission to look for a better life. I didn't know what my parents were doing when they brought me here. I don't think that they realized either that we could have died in the in the border. But I think it's worth it now because now I see my children and the opportunities that they have. So it is definitely because of the American dream. It is definitely because we want to have a better life. I think every human being deserves the right to the pursuit of happiness, right? To seek a better future. And I just don't want to go back to Mexico because I don't see it as my home country anymore.
If thousands of Mexican immigrants return to their home country, there will be repercussions to international business and education. That's according to Elizabeth Chatham, a Phoenix immigration attorney. We begin with her thoughts on possible changes to the Nafta trade agreement.
And he does have the authority to rescind the country's participation in Nafta with giving Canada and Mexico a 6-month advance notice. The purpose of that advance notice is to try to get on the negotiating table and to come to an agreement so the treaty doesn't fail. So from an immigration perspective, there is the TN visa, which is part of NAFTA. It's a highly popular visa, at least in Arizona as a border state. I do a lot of TN visas in my practice for Mexican nationals and Canadian nationals. I couldn't tell you that I'm doing one more than the other, but when you look at it on an annual basis, there are more Mexican nationals who are pursuing the TN visa than Canadian nationals. And that is going to affect our country, and it's going to affect especially the state of Arizona with our ability to freely trade and also just move product from one country to another.
What do you tell those clients right now?
What I'm doing right now is closely watching kind of the next moves. And right now it is a legitimate visa. I don't think that people should be too concerned about falling out of status overnight. I don't think that will happen. The NAFTA visa, similar to other visas that we have, relies on the fact that someone is highly educated and highly skilled. And so there are usually other visas that we can adjust for our clients. But one of the reasons I love the TN visa is it's highly flexible. There's no cap. You can apply for it any time of the year. You can apply for it at the American Embassy in Canada or in Mexico. You can apply for it within the United States with USCIS. So there's a lot of ways a company can quickly pivot and make decisions.
If it does change, that changes business in Arizona.
It can, yes. That immediate flexibility, getting decisions in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, or even 2 days is going to go away. You're going to have to plan a lot more in the future. And it may shift from people being hired by American employers to businesses who are foreign actually coming into the U.S. and setting up shop and becoming investors.
How does one get or obtain the TN visa? I mean, what sorts of criteria do you have to meet?
Typically, you need to have a degree, so a bachelor's degree or higher. In some certain circumstances, a license might be required to practice in that profession, especially if you're in the healthcare industry, for example. And then you would have an employer in the United States sponsor you for that visa.
And how long do these permits usually last for?
They're renewable. Typically, they're 3 years at a time. But if you are Mexican and you need to travel back and forth, you have to do an annual visa.
For the thousands of dreamers in Arizona, what should they be doing right now?
My advice is to my clients who are dreamers is prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. You know, and I'm meeting with my clients almost on a daily basis to brainstorm with them, figure out their comfort zone, what are the risks, what's going to happen if it doesn't work out the way that we're hoping for, and do they want to pursue it? And I can tell you overwhelmingly, I am so proud and impressed that they're taking kind of like the power back into their hands to say, I'm going to pursue something that I never tried before because I have nothing to lose.
Is there any benefit to returning to Mexico and then coming back? I mean, is that any part of the advice that you might offer?
In very limited circumstances, that could be something we explore. But typically, unless it's a very short duration outside the U.S., that's not something my clients are really interested in pursuing. And for sure, that's a risk because if you leave the U.S., you might not be able to come back. and you're relying on the fact that the consulate is going to grant you a visa or a green card status in order to re-enter. So there's absolutely risk that the client would be taking, and depending on their circumstances and their risk level, they're going to make that decision.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Sure.
The night Donald Trump was elected America's 45th president, he delivered a victory speech in New York. In the audience, Art Del Cueto, an Arizona Border Patrol agent.
Prior to election night, we had an invitation from his camp saying if we'd like to be present at his party, you would say, on election night, and we were there.
You personally sort of led this charge to support him from the Border Patrol perspective. Why was he the candidate for you?
He reached out to us. That was really big for us. You know, it was somebody that he reached out to us. There was other candidates at the time, obviously, but he's the only one that reached out. The others reached out to different members of management. However, he reached out to the union, and he said, you know, that he felt that we were the experts. We are the ones that were out there every day, and he wanted our perspective, and that's big.
He has changed some of his tone since he was elected. Does that bother you? Does that concern you that maybe he's a different person now?
I don't think he's changed his tone when it comes to border security. There's different avenues, I guess, when you start speaking about interior enforcement. However, our concern is the actual border security.
What do Border Patrol agents want in the next president?
I think they want somebody that backs them up, obviously, and that is willing to enforce the laws that are already on the books. We've never necessarily in any way asked for more laws to be built or changes in laws. We just want the laws that are already there on the books to be enforced the right way.
You have been very close to Donald Trump in the last 6-9 months. Tell me about him.
You know, I guess what you hear and what you see and you know, the rumors that go out there, they're far from the truth. He was more than respectful towards me. He met members of my family, and he was very respectful towards everyone there.
As he builds his team that will surround him once he's president, what are you looking for in someone who leads the Border Patrol?
We're looking at someone that's in touch with the Border Patrol agents that put their lives on the line every day, and someone that's willing to listen to the agents. In the past, we've had different commissioners that really, honestly, they just did not care what the agents were asking for, and we're looking for someone that actually cares to listen to what the agents need out in the field.
Any idea who might be the next CBP commissioner?
I don't have an idea. You know, we don't know. But I think that you know, there was a meeting here the week before the election, and we spoke. Senator Sessions was in town, and we had conversations. And he did openly say that he was going to lean towards the National Border Patrol Council and members of the council for any advice when it comes to border security. And we're just looking forward to being able to be part of it.
So that means the Border Patrol Union will have a place at the table in the Trump administration.
Well, I think by him saying he's going to listen to the experts, pointing us out directly, and by him doing it, I mean Senator Sessions, I think we will. I think we will have a good voice in D.C. To proper represent our agents. You
are Hispanic, conservative, very in support of Donald Trump. Has that been easy for you, this campaign?
You know, everyone has their own views. You bring up the Hispanic part, but realistically, regardless of me being Hispanic, I'm an American first and foremost, and I care about the security of our country. I care about the security of the citizens that are in our country. That's my number one concern.
Okay, thank you, Art.
Thank you.
Despite predictions Democrats could have seized Arizona this election, it did not happen. Brian Sychak ran the Trump campaign in Arizona, and he says Arizona was and is a Republican stronghold.
I was always confident he would win Arizona. I know the Democrats talked about spending a lot of time here. They talked about spending a lot of money. But at the end of the day, they really didn't put much of an effort in. And this is Republican territory. Republican governor, all statewide elected officials are Republican, a registration advantage, a better organized ground game. I know, again, the Democrats sort of made a motion to be here, but they really didn't put the effort in. I think they realized the writing was on the wall, especially when you look at the issue set. With such a strong focus on immigration being one of the key issues, the Democrats' message simply would not resonate here.
Donald Trump and Governor Pence visited the state a lot. Were they concerned that they were possibly going to lose it, or they just wanted to make sure that Arizona knew they were there?
Well, one, I think Donald Trump really likes Arizona. Also, if you look at Arizona's proximity to Colorado and Nevada, two states the campaign spent a lot of effort in, it's a relatively easy jump. The fact is Hillary Clinton did not work as hard as Donald Trump. She didn't do as many rallies as he did. Trump was out in Nevada and Colorado a lot, making Arizona an easy stop.
A lot of Republican talent in Arizona. Do you
Yes.
foresee any names that we know moving on to the Trump administration?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Governor Brewer was an excellent national surrogate from the beginning. Jeff DeWitt was the first statewide elected official to support Donald Trump and became the COO. So I do think Arizona will have a voice in the new Trump administration.
Arizona emerged as a battleground state, which you actually predicted a couple months before the election. How did that happen?
Well, I think, again, with a candidacy like Trump, sort of all of the boxes are moved around a bit, and he built a very unique coalition, a unique Republican coalition. And I think it took folks time to get on board with Mr. Trump and to sort of understand his message. The fact is he was not politics as usual. He was the antithesis of that. So I think folks sort of wanted to take an opportunity to hear him out and let the campaign play itself out. So lots of states that were battleground states were and weren't, and everything sort of changed a bit. But at the end of the day, this is a Republican state, and I think we saw that.
Arizona has earned itself a place at the political table, if you will. What does that mean moving forward?
Well, I think it means that the issues that matter here are important to the country. As a border state, immigration is a key issue here. It has been for a very long time, but it's also an issue that other states are dealing with. Obamacare, the fact that prices rose north of 100% for premiums, is something that other states are dealing with. So there's a lot of issues here that resonate across the country.
Immigration, Affordable Care Act are all issues that people are paying attention to. Based on what you know, should there be some concern that things are about to change dramatically?
I think things are going to change. I think there's going to be a fix on these things. I think there's going to be some real attention to solving the immigration problem. In 1986, when they passed Simpson-Mazzoli, they said this was it. There would be no more amnesty. And it seems like the Democrats have been trying to push amnesty or a version of amnesty for years, and voters are simply frustrated with that. At the end of the day, folks who came here illegally broke the law. And I don't think citizens believe they should be rewarded for that. So I do think that's an issue that's going to get a lot of attention. Again, the fact that premiums are up north of 100% is very troubling. President-elect Trump has said he's going to take a serious look at Obamacare. Some of the things that worked, children being able to stay on their parents' health plan until 26, not being denied for pre-existing conditions. I think those are things that he may look at. But at the end of the day, we need to take a wholesale look at it and see if it's working and what's not working. And if it's not working, we need to replace it with something that is.
Okay.
I do also think that on those issues, I think President-elect Trump is going to take a problem-solving approach. I think we've shown that he's not as wedded to Republican, Democrat ideology per se. I think he's a problem solver. I think he's going to get some very bright people in there. He's going to take a look at the solutions and see what works. And I think that's a bit of a unique approach to Washington, frankly.
The aftermath of this election giving political commentators a lot to talk about. Here's analysis from Marilyn Rodriguez of Veritas and Barrett Marson of Marson Media. Barrett, where the Democrats fell behind, the Republicans really seized on that, or is this a new breed of Republicans that came out?
No, I think this was a special election. This was two incredibly flawed candidates that probably, when you look at it, each other was the only ones that they could beat. I don't believe this will be a harbinger of things to come. I don't believe that this is going to set a tide for the next 20 years. Donald Trump was flawed, Hillary Clinton was flawed, and voters recognize that, and I think that's why you saw so many undecideds even so late. I mean, there's never been a presidential election more covered than this one, and we all knew each of their flaws. And at the end of the day, Hillary was not very likable, and at least Donald Trump was someone we knew through fun television. Hillary Clinton is someone we've only seen through the news, if you will, whereas Donald Trump has been on, reality shows and has done shows like Howard Stern, where he talks directly to people and to voters. So through something other than CNN.
Would you agree, Marilyn, that Hillary's flawed?
I agree that she was a flawed candidate for sure. I mean, the Democrats were fooling ourselves if we don't at least admit that we nominated somebody, we handed them the nomination whose negatives were above or underwater way back in 2015. And we never were really able to overcome that. I do disagree with the tide isn't coming, though. there is a tide coming. The Obama coalition, everybody keeps hearing the Obama coalition didn't show up. That's right, they didn't show up, but they're more unified than ever now. There are, what, 8 million Tea Partiers out there, and they had nothing to lose? There's 80 million of us, and we have everything to lose.
You know, I gotta say though, when you start looking at some of the numbers, 30% of Latinos voted for Donald Trump.
You're looking at that nationally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
and in Arizona, I have numbers here, and I wanted it because I knew that was going to come up. 30% of our population is Latino. 1 million of them are eligible to vote, and 70% of them are registered.
Why do we see so many Latinos come out to support Donald Trump?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I was talking to someone about that who works in the Latino community. There is not a good answer right now. I think that is something that political scientists will have to look at in the future to determine why 30% of Latinos came out to support a guy who wants to deport 10 or 11 million Latinos who are undocumented, who wants to build a wall between the United States and the rest of Central South America. So that's an excellent question. I don't know why 30%, unless they, voted more of an economic message. Certainly in the final days of the campaign, Donald Trump's message to minority groups was, "What do you have to lose?" And that may have resonated. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see if they do lose more or if they sort of start gaining in a Republican presidential, to the Republican White House and a Republican Congress.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see a split in the Latino community from those in Florida who have maybe a Cuban heritage, who follow the more conservative principled values. These individuals we know on the Latino side are social conservatives. They're single issue voters who would agree that the Supreme Court was their #1 reason for voting Republican at the top of the ticket. But in Arizona, in particular, over 86% of Latinos rejected Trump who showed up to vote.
Well, that may be, but I think you, Marilyn, have to look at that. Arizona is not a purple state.
And there was talk it would be.
And there was talk it would be. And when you look at the only victory that Democrats can point to, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, those were Republicans who voted against him as well. They could not have done it without a strong Republican backlash toward Sheriff Joe.
I think what we saw is that Arizonans, and in particular Latinos, because again, they're the ones that showed up this cycle, rejected this narrative that is building around the Republican Party. And to that point, that Obama coalition that we're talking about, that's the new American majority. That's non-white voters, that's young white women, unmarried, and that is millennials and young voters who have not necessarily yet created a good habit of voting, but will continue to bind together, especially in response to what is coming down from this administration.
I think you hear a lot of hopefulness in Marilyn's voice, but I don't think you see a lot of actual action to match that hopefulness.
Okay, let's talk about action though, because we are seeing protests.
Because of Republicans.
We are seeing protest. Why did we not see that 8 years ago, 4 years ago when President Obama went into office? Why are there protests now against Donald Trump? Why this need to demonstrate?
Well, I think you saw much milder protests 4 years and 8 years ago, not on the streets, but on the webs, on the interwebs, on blogs and things like that, where people were very angry, and you saw them motivated at the ballot box to repudiate President Obama's legislative agenda. That's why so many things had to be done by executive order, which many things can be undone by executive order now. So I think while there wasn't marches in the streets, there was a lot of consternation amongst people.
Marilyn,
4 and 8 years ago.
Are these people Democrats who are protesting?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure the majority of them are, and if they aren't and they're in the streets protesting now, I welcome you to the party. We are going to grow our base, inevitably so. Yeah, I think the entire nation, and that is definitely on display in previous reporting on the presidential race, allowed itself to fall into a place of complacency, maybe even denial, that this wouldn't happen.
Marilyn, are there any Democrats that we could see emerge in the next 2 years?
I think you will. I think you'll see a bunch of Democrats emerge.
I'm not
going to put anybody on the spot, but I definitely think you'll see individuals emerge that maybe are surprises. And I'd also like to remind people that
If they're surprises, that means they're unknown to the general public. And that's going to be difficult.
I'd also caution people against thinking that things can't change. Barack Obama, 2 years prior to his presidential run, was unknown. He was a state senator from Illinois. So people out there think that it can't be done. We've done it before, and we're going to do it again. And good luck keeping your promises that you have to this alt-right, right? I hope you build that wall, and I hope that people continue to, you know, I will relook back.
Yeah.
But I think the Republicans are in a precarious position, which means they're weak.
They're not.
Definitely.
They're not
in a state
in
where we got
precarious-
less than 4 points away from winning the presidency, in a deep red state that hadn't gone red since 1996, I think that is an unfair assessment of the building majority that is coalescing in this state.
Again, aside from Greg Stanton, there will not be one legitimate Democrat who can stand up to any of the other constitutional officers.
Is the Republican Party fractured, Barrett?
Winning has a way of bringing people together. And you know, in Arizona, the state House and Senate are Republican. The governor's office is Republican. Every single statewide elected position is Republican. At the federal level, you have a Republican in the White House and a Republican speaker and a Republican majority leader in the Senate. Winning has a way of soothing divides and getting things done.
The incumbent party has to govern, and I am not confident that, given the campaign promises, that promise will be fulfilled.
Arizona has been a hotbed of activity. You know, it gets a lot of national media attention. I think that is actually going to increase over the next 2 years because, you know, we are a border state and we have a lot of issues here in Arizona that will help define whether we are making America, you know, if Arizona is great again, then
we're a battleground. We're a battleground.
Well, we're not necessarily just a battleground, but I think we are we will show the way for much of America.
Okay. We could do this all day, but we won't. Thank you so much to
you.
both of you. And that's our program. Arizona Week will not broadcast next week due to the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll return on December 2nd, and we'll discuss possible impacts to health care under a Trump administration. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.